Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to the New Cow Corner podcast with Mark, the Gecko Room, and Anthony, Cold Blooded Gems. And today we have a good one, as always. Heather from Leyline Exotics, the one and only.
Thank you.
What's up, Heather?
Thank you. Welcome.
What's up, guys? How are you guys doing?
Awesome.
Amazing.
Great to have you here.
Thank you.
Can you give us, for the people out there that don't know who you are, give us a quick rundown on your business, your hobby, what it is that you do for fun as a hobby and professionally, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no worries. I'm Heather. I call myself Leyline Exotics for the crested gecko wing of my herpetological journey. I've been keeping herps since, I convinced my parents to get me herps when I was like 5 years old. I think the first ones I bred were just the little anoles from PetSmart or whatever, but I've been keeping and breeding for a long time, various different species. I did bearded dragons and stuff like that for a while. And then most recently, I had resisted getting crested geckos for my entire life until recently. I was like a lot of people where I got my hands on a lily white and I was like, okay, I guess I'm gonna have like hundreds of these in my house now. So now I call myself Leyline Exotics, but professionally, I have my degree in field biology. My specialty is in herpetology, but I also do a lot with, or did a lot, I should say, with behavior, specifically like sexual reproductive behavior, stress, and nowadays I work as a consulting herpetologist or consulting biologist, whatever you want to say, for more of the private or construction side of things. So I have a that sort of background, but I've been keeping herps as a hobby for a lot longer. So these two things kind of inform one another, and I bring that to the crested gecko hobby now.
Very cool. Very cool. So how has your profession, your education influenced what you do and how you do what you do in the hobby?
Yeah, I was always a bit of a little researcher, even when I was a kid. That's how I would convince my parents to let me have these animals, that I would show them the books and the this and the that, and I would have the magazines, the reptiles magazines, and all that sort of stuff. So I was always trying to stay up to date, and I would be on like fauna classifieds or like king snakes discussing things on the old forums. So I would always try to research the species I kept as best as I could and use their kind of naturalistic or more biological side of like, you know, their natural history to inform the way I keep them or inform the strategies I use to breed them in captivity. And so getting my degree in biology, and I was a National Science Foundation graduate research fellow as well, like all of these sorts of things, my research background has kind of reinforced that way that I approach herpetoculture, right? And so I use things like my background now in reading scientific literature and my background with behavior and reproduction to kind of push my herp keeping, in my opinion, to a higher degree, a higher standard, and to the next level, as it were. We're all going to have our different strategies and different ways we feel we're succeeding with our collections. But for me, that research background that I have helps me achieve my goals with my herps as well in captivity.
So you're not breeding your crested geckos in 12-quart plastic bins with paper towels in them?
I mean, I'm not the person to knock a 12-quart bin, or maybe that might be a little small, but I'm not the person to knock paper towels or whatever, because for some people, I always advocate keep your animals in a way that allows you to best meet their needs, right? If you are the kind of person who can best keep a paper towel enclosure clean and sufficient for them, then maybe that's the way for you to go. For me, I keep my crested geckos in bioactive or semi-bioactive because I see that they are enriched with that sort of stuff in my personal collection. It best meets my own personal like schedule and other sorts of input requirements. So I'll never be the person who's knocking on paper towels across the board, right?
No, I
Paper
wasn't
towels.
bashing anyone any either. For anyone who was asking, I was implying with her scientific background and biology background that she probably wasn't likely using paper towels. I'm definitely not
Yeah.
knocking anyone either.
Well, that's
You know,
interesting because I would have thought the opposite, being that you have a scientific background and stuff, then your main focus would have been like sterilization. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's I had a long
not much
conversation about that.
sterile in the wild though.
That's exactly
Yeah,
it, Anthony.
it's not much sterile in the wild, but being that you're doing studies and me speaking to other people about that, they they prefer to have sterilization over introducing whatever you're going to introduce, like,
Yeah, and
so
there's different
it's
types of scientific research as well. Like, if I
Sure.
were conducting an experiment on something like parasites,
Hmm.
or or with certain specific factors, there
Something
might
super
be.
controlled.
Yeah, there's
yeah,
an
yeah.
argument to keep it very controlled. But with my hobby, I'm just trying to give them a balance of ease of care and enrichment and microhabitats and stuff that they can regulate their own body conditions and all that sort of stuff. And like Anthony said, the wild, because I specialize in field work, the wild is messy, nasty. These animals are so much more resilient than we give them credit for. Crested geckos are. I've kept different species, right? They are bomb proof. I don't know if you guys will let me cuss on this, but they're fucking bomb proof, right?
Definitely are.
So that's in the grand scheme of things, right? And I love working with more sensitive species, but I also it's a breath of fresh air sometimes to have these animals that will thrive in conditions that also work best for us as humans with like jobs, and some of us have kids and this and that. So crested geckos are awesome, and I try not to stress too much on every little facet of their care. Luckily for me, I'm not really conducting research in that sterile of a way here, so it's a nice change of pace from some of the other research that I've conducted.
Cool. That's
Hmm.
So what do you, hobby wise, what's your objective? What's your goal? What do you want to accomplish? Are you working with specific lines, specific genes? Do you have a goal? What are you trying to accomplish at Leyline? What's the end game?
Yeah, one thing that really attracted me to crested geckos is that they do seem, now this is, not everybody agrees with this, but to me they seem like a polymorphic system. And what people refer to when they mean like polymorphic system is in the wild they have several types of looks or morphs that constitute the wild type, right? You'd see phantoms or flames or Dows or whatever traits you want to describe crested gecko by. You'd see these things naturally occurring in the wild. So that can allow us to achieve a huge range of phenotypes of looks in the hobby, right? As we captively breed them and as we work more with crested geckos, which are relatively new to the hobby, we're kind of unlocking all these genes like that are new on the scene. They're just popping up like faster and faster and faster, especially with Korea involved. So from my perspective, crested geckos are kind of at the precipice of becoming a much more varied group of looks from an already very customizable sort of set of genetics and looks you're working with. So to me, I feel like there's so many possibilities with the looks and the traits that crested geckos have. And I think we all have some of our favorite breeders where even if you had no idea whose gecko you were looking at, you could be like, I know who that belongs to, and that's so and so's, right? So we can all cultivate these looks. And I have a lot of interest in investigating and categorizing and describing how genes work. And so crested geckos, I feel like, are ripe for that sort of work, right? Looking into things like how does even a not so super new gene, but an interesting gene like empty back, how does that behave? Like everybody seems to have their own idea on that, and there's a million different ways you can investigate a million different genes. Even Dalmatian, one of the earliest things that people worked with, is still not that well understood. So we have a lot of horizons to explore with crested
What?
gecko.
Why do you think? Why do you, since you have that type of background? Why do you think that is? If we've had them for so long, why do we not have like definitive answers on these things?
It's tough. I know a lot of people would say, "I wish we could just do genetic testing for all of these like traits or all that sort of stuff." And from what I've seen, like being relatively new in the hobby, having only a couple seasons under my belt, breeding specifically, I most people can't even agree on certain traits, right? Like some people can't even if you got 100 crested gecko breeders into a room, I don't know if you could get 90 to agree on exactly what phantom is, like what defines phantom and all of that sort of
Confused every
stuff.
day. But people are, I thought I knew, and every day I hear something else. I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
sure.
and so
That's why I asked, because it's with everything: phantoms, empty back, super stripes, cappuccino, like everything. Depending on who you talk to, it's like it separates somewhere down the
yeah, and
line.
well, like I have this conversation with my friends as well. Like it's kind of hard even to draw the line between heterozygous and homozygous empty back. I have a lot of empty back in my collection, and I've had animals sold to me as homozygous empty back or super empty back or whatever way you want to demarcate two alleles of empty back, and they've produced offspring that have shown me like unequivocally that these are not homozygous empty back animals, right? So if we can't even agree on the definition of some of the basic traits we're working with, doing things like genetic testing is going to be it's going to be impossible. Right. And so what I've noticed in the crested gecko hobby even is there's not a lot of consensus on what exactly defines a trait. Like I think for most of us, we could look at an xanthic and say, okay, that's an xanthic, or we're still at the phase where we can pretty well recognize cappuccinos or sables. But like I said, even more basic traits like phantom are really really hard to get people to agree on.
Let alone, yeah,
So I think that's
cappuccinos,
one
sables,
reason.
or highways. I mean, that's what
Hmm.
baffles me. I mean, you got three genes that are all just ironically allelic. I mean, or are we talking about the same gene that happens to express itself differently? I mean, are we just making it three genes? We can't. I mean, to me, it's I don't know.
Yeah, and I won't purport to know, right? Like just because I have whatever background doesn't mean that I like know better than anybody else. I'm just bringing my little flavor of kind of personal history to the hobby, but I think that really frustrates a lot of people. And don't get me wrong, I get frustrated too, right? But at the same time, I think it's really exciting at the same time. So it's all about our
Yes,
perspective, I
it
suppose.
is.
It's
So, what
very
are you
frustrating.
you working on? I know you mentioned the empty back, but what type of projects do you have going on over there? What are you
Yeah,
trying to decode?
I have really bad ADHD, so I've got a lot of different types of projects. Ooh, I want to ooh. I think a lot of gecko people have pretty bad ADHD. But some of my main
Gecko induced.
focuses, yeah, so, so it might be. Some of my main focuses are I do have a lot of empty back in my collection, and I find empty back and super stripe to be like super exciting myself. I think you just can't beat the look of a black and white empty back or super stripe. I also I'm working with the morphs, right? The sables, the xanthics, the cappuccinos, the this, the that, fire, stuff like that. Um, and I'm also a love of mine is texture, right? Like geckos, these crested geckos have such different types of scalation across different morphs, across different just lines of scalation. I have some of the stuff that Chase Carmody's deemed boba. I have those in my collection as well. And so scalation is quite an interesting trait to me. So I want to work on that as well. And I'm kind of
It is.
investigating things with that.
I think it's an
Yeah.
untapped part of the hobby. I think when people are
Yeah.
tired of colors and chasing colors, people are going to start looking into, scale stuff, more structure stuff, because there is a
Yeah.
lot of variations. Like you said, I mean, in my collection alone, I don't have anything from Chase, but I have geckos that have those super thick scalation. I have super soft scale stuff. I have animals with long, hairy, Anthony Caponetto's hairy
Absolutely. Yeah.
stuff. I mean, there's so many different types of scalations in my collection that I can only imagine that at some juncture people are going to start applying colors specifically to a certain type of scalation.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of us have seen in person how super soft scale or soft scale or whatever you would like to call it alters the whole vibe of a gecko. I have some super soft scale animals, especially with that dark base, who they're always just super saturated and bright and matte, and it looks like bougie and all that sort of stuff. So I think you're correct to say that that's a frontier that people will explore more. There's certainly a lot of people working with texture, but not super explicitly. So I think it's a really fun untapped corner, untapped niche.
Offbeat topic. Orange juice on ice cubes is so freaking good.
It is. It's just crispy.
Oh my god, I love.
It's
Oh wow,
refreshing.
I want more. mm.
Yeah, you're making me jealous now, actually.
So what? So you said you've only been doing this for 2 seasons now.
Yeah, 2 seasons breeding. 2 or 3, depends on how you wanna categorize it, but yeah.
How did you? I know you said you've been kept reptiles for a long time, on and off, basically your whole life. What actually brought you to crested geckos? What was it the variation, the ability, like you said, to work with this the genes and be able to make your own stuff, or was there a person or what brought you? Where was the first time you had a a crested gecko in your hand?
I went to a local person. I'm in California. I went to a local person who I had followed through, like, various, fauna and Facebook and all that sort of stuff. They focused on crested geckos and they were getting out of the hobby. And I was like, "Oh, maybe I'll just go. I wanna see this person, and say thank you for all of their content that I engaged with as they left the hobby." And, I don't know how many years ago this was at this point, but they had some lily whites for sale on their table as they were, selling their collection, all that sort of stuff. And it was a really little baby crested gecko lily white. At the time, I didn't realize it, but it was fired down, and I saw this, like, beautiful, like, pastel white looking thing. I said I had no idea crested geckos could look like this because I wasn't really, like, tapped into crested geckos. And it was at the time, it was a really good price at the time, but it was $300, and I was like, "Do I wanna spend $300 on just, like, this little baby thing that I'm not gonna do anything with?" And it'll be this one-off thing that I get. And I said, "Oh, yeah, fuck it, I'm gonna do it." And so I buy this little gecko, I bring it home, and, on the way home, I pull it out of its, when I get home anyway, I pull it out of its little deli cup, and it's like red. It was a little red-based lily white, and I didn't really know that crested geckos fired up and down that much. Like, I wasn't plugged to, uh, to the kind of crested gecko world. I had kept chameleons and all that sort of stuff, but I didn't know these little geckos did that so dramatically as well. And I would hand feed this guy. He was in a beautiful, planted vivarium and UVB and all that kind of stuff. And I hand feed him, and I'm like, man, oh my God, no, I'm in love with these things. And, like, what even is a lily white then? And so I went and I looked up crested gecko genetics, and it was Jess and Anthony's foundation genetics guide that I found, and I was like, oh man, this is my jam. This is what I really loved about my time um, breeding before bearded dragons, and I had done some genetic and epigenetic work for my master's as well. So I also used to teach when I was in grad school. I also taught intro biology and intro genetics and all that sort of stuff. So I was kind of missing that content as well. And I could see just through the early version of the Foundation Genetics Guide that there was so much more to be done. Like huge credit to Jess and Anthony for compiling those data and all that sort of stuff. But they'll tell you as well, like there's so much more to be done. And like I just I was very intrigued. It really sort of tickled my pickle. I was like, oh, I'm getting into this, and it's the rest is history.
Awesome. Have you done anything with that? Have you started putting in your pen to paper, if you will, and contributing to that Foundation Genetics at all, or any work with them?
Yeah,
I mean, I know they're going through some
I
stuff right
talk
now,
with
but
Anthony. Yeah, exactly. I try to give people some space to not be like hounded by like, hey, like you know, what like what about my genetics and all that sort of stuff. I am gathering my own data. I'm performing my own experimental pairings, which is kind of tough to perform experimental pairings and still move those animals because they're usually not, the most refined version of that gene. We have to find the edges of a definition to actually define
absolutely,
something. So sometimes these
absolutely.
edge cases aren't the most visually or like market wise, they're not in demand. So I try to manage my experimental pairings with the feasibility of rehoming these animals when I can. But I am performing experimental pairings. I've done within my own collection things like some of my own personal like husbandry experiments and stuff like that. And I'm working with people like Kristen with Cresty Works. Shout out to Kristen, one of my
Girl,
Cresty
Kristen,
besties here. Yeah,
she's
we're
awesome.
working on some stuff together. Yeah,
Really
her and I
cool.
actually we have some projects we're working on, but most recently I helped Kristen get her Pixel article, her long-awaited Pixel article out there. I don't know if you guys have taken a look.
She didn't tell me. I
Um,
talked to her yesterday. Thanks.
yeah,
No, she didn't tell
yeah.
me anything about it. No, didn't
Well,
even
were
mention.
you on social media? Because she was
No,
blitzing it
no, I
up
was
out
talking to
there.
her on the phone. Nope, nope. No, I haven't been actually. That's my problem. I've
Wow.
been last few days
Hey,
I've been
man,
slacking.
that's
But that's
good though.
good. That's
We
good
all
to know.
needed a
Good for
break.
her. Good for you guys. Thank you for helping her too. She's an amazing human being.
She's one of my favorite people in the
If
hobby
she
and
likes
outside
you,
of the hobby as
you
well.
are
She's a
definitely blessed to have her in your corner. She's an awesome human.
yeah. She's very she's very thoughtful. She puts in the work to actually work on her theories. I'm relatively new to the hobby, so I wasn't around during like her early investigations into Pixel. But man, working with her on this article, I saw the thoughtfulness, the systematic approach she had. She didn't make assumptions. She was like even the most pixel looking animals that most people would mark up a ton and try to sell as a pixel. She said, "No, no, no, let me actually prove that out as a pixel." And the results were very surprising. So it takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of humility to do stuff like that, to actually prove something out and look at the results and say, hey, I was wrong, right? And Kristen did all
Absolutely.
that stuff. And I was like, if I wasn't in love with her before, I was certainly in love with her after because I was like,
I
wow.
still don't even know what
She
the hell a pixel is. But
Yeah, well, that was one of our main goals with the Pixel article is don't get me wrong, I come from an academic background. I could poop out a wall of text if I wanted to, but that's not very helpful to empower people to work with Pixel themselves, right? Kristen, you guys probably know that she would coach anybody in DMs all day, every day about how to work with Pixel and what she thinks about Pixel. Well, this gives her a place to put all of her thoughts down, and even more usefully, in my opinion, and her opinion as well, give everybody just a million billion pictures of things that are het pixel, things that are homozygous pixel, things that have proven incompatible with pixel, and people can make their own decisions, right? If they don't believe Kristen on this or that, well, why don't you go take a look at the results of her experiments, and then you guys can decide. So, and if you're questioning whether you might have a possible pixel, go take a look at the massive photo dump we have and compare it to the animal that you might think is a pixel.
That's cool. Where is that? Where can I find that?
You can find it on Kristen with Cressy
Oh,
Works'
on her
website.
page.
So that,
Awesome.
yeah,
Awesome.
just on her
Are you
website. She
working with
has.
Pixel yourself? Are you working with them?
I have a few pixels, het pixel, not visual pixels, but het pixels. They're not my forte exactly, and I have some from Kristen and from Pangea lineage, and being a recessive gene, it takes a second to kind of to get some visuals out of there. And I'm also doing some test pairings with that too, because one thing we wanted to give give the proper thought to is that other people have different ideas about how pixel works. So rather than dismissing those ideas out of hand, Kristen and I are also testing those hypotheses or those mechanisms as well. So and so are people in Korea and other people in the United States. So yeah, I might not be doing the most financially advantageous stuff with the pixel in my collection, but me personally, this isn't my main source of income, and I find
There's a lot of
the
things
experimentation
more valuable than money, you know.
Yeah, and if it can help Kristen out, or if it can help the community out with informing people and empowering
Absolutely.
people to achieve their own goals,
Huge.
yeah, I don't mind taking a little less of a financial benefit from my pairings. I'm not gonna make animals that nobody wants, right? That's another thing, but I'm not always trying to make the highest dollar animals every single pairing I do.
Sure. Mark, do you have Pixel? You working with Pixel too? You don't have anything from Kristen?
No pixels at all. Um, I find the work interesting. What I find about it most inspiring is to be able to continue to work with Pixel after. I mean, I see a lot of different things, and Kristen just onwards and upwards keeps pushing forward, puts the work in. Um, Even if it's not money involved, but she's spending more than money, she's spending time, and that's the most valuable thing you could invest into something like this. I honestly don't work with Pixel because just like other stuff that people may call me crazy, I'm not intrigued by it myself personally. I'm intrigued by the work that is being done with it, but it's not something that I really want, like tricolors. You know, you may look at me like I'm crazy, but it doesn't intrigue me, you know? So no, I'm not working with pixels. But
And that's what's great about crested geckos is there's so many different combinations or looks or this or that, is that we can all work with something that might personally intrigue us and might not really interest the next breeder, even if
yeah.
that breeder is your friend, and we can respect each other's loves for these different looks. Like, I'm a pattern Dalmatian person. I personally enjoy them. And the joke that I make with a lot of my friends is, hey, look, I hatched some new snake food, right? It's all, it's all covered in spots or straight to the garbage bin, but that's something that I really enjoy the look of.
I
And
think that's
like,
going to be
it's okay
big,
not to
if
enjoy
I'm being
Pixel. It's
honest.
okay. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think you're not the only one. You know, I maybe I'm biased and maybe I'm just rude, but I think that the only reason people don't like and rave over pattern Dows is because a handful of spot snobs have been pretty vocal about not liking them. So because the masses don't want to upset or, you know, put a wake in the ocean, if you will, people just act as if they don't like them. Ask out of 100 people what their first love of geckos was, their first favorite gecko, And out of the 100 people, I guarantee you 85, if not 90% of them will say a Dalmatian. It's not until people get in these little circles and around these high-end boutique breeders that they stop liking Dows and Dows spots. Like Dows spots, I mean, even for myself, like I'm not shy about it by any means, but when I first got in, I mean, like a big oil spot on a gecko's nose or side of his head or something would be cool. If it was the only spot I had, it would be freaking awesome. You know, it was a marker. It was something different about that animal from every other harlequin or every other everything. And again, I get it. I get that Dalmatian, I mean, at least in my eyes, it is a gene, right? I believe there's multiple types of Dalmatians genetically, but that's not what I'm getting at. But as far as working with genes and keeping genes under control, I agree with not having Dalmatian spots on certain animals because you're including a gene in an animal that's supposed to only be these genes or something that you only want to be these genes. So controlling and putting Dalmatian, boiling it down to a gene, I guess, and controlling that gene, I understand. But throwing a gecko in the trash because it has a spot on it would be like saying Cindy Crawford should have never been on a beauty magazine. I mean, it's
Well,
just
it's like you said, it's the blind leading the blind, and then they listening to the most popular blind person because I
unfortunately.
I know for a fact that you can have geckos with great lineage with no spots on it. You see the parents with no spots, and then all of a sudden you're popping a gecko with spots, and vice versa. So
Yeah,
Mhm.
until you learn that, and you get that out of your system,
it's a
you
gene.
like
Yep, get it out of your system. I've seen, even in my short time in the hobby, I've seen pretty quick trajectories of people getting it out of their system. They come in, they become really intense spot snobs, and then they have to face the reality of Dow spots. And I'll never
I
throw
would
away a gecko
never turn down a
for a
gecko
spot
because it
oh,
had
here.
spots
imagine the
on it. Like,
geckos that these people got rid of because it had a spot or two. Oh
probably
my
got
gosh.
it.
Yeah, more power to them. And I understand these are we're breeding them for aesthetics, right? And aesthetics are always going to have taste makers. It's just like fashion. There's always going to be people following trends, or they see a really particularly like banging Instagram post and they're like, "You know what? That's what I'm doing." And there's always going to be fads and phases, and a lot of advice that I see from people, and I think it's good advice, is to make sure what you're working with like visually appeals to you. I That
Absolutely.
first lily white I was talking about, he is actually a very spotty lily white, and I
Really?
fell in love with these super high white coverage, high Dow spotted sort of pattern Dalmatians, and I've been working on that and making a lot of good progress. He ended up being my first breeder
Awesome.
for that project. So, and it's a little out there, and it's not for everybody. Um, and whether people's tastes align with it or not, I'm really happy to be working on it. And
Good. That's all
like
that
we're all going to
matters.
have our personal fashion, and then we're all going to be interested in dressing for the fashion of the time as well.
Sure.
So both of those things are good in my opinion.
Sure. This is the first season I'm trying this season to make super Dalmatian frappuccinos. So I have
Ooh,
some I've worked for a long time trying to make super spotty lily whites, which I have, and one that I'm finally happy with. And I got
awesome.
him with a pretty damn spotty cap that hopefully I want to at least see how it pans out. It's hard. In my experience, it hasn't been easy making super Dalmatian lily whites, and
Not
for
at all.
whatever
It's
reason
very
I don't
difficult.
know. But again, I have my ideas, and I got some things that I think are going to work, and I'm excited. And I can only imagine how many people would call me nuts and tell me they'll never sell. Well, good luck. I'm not trying to sell them, so I don't care. I'm not doing it for money. It's my curiosity, if you will, my interest. I want to see super Dal fraps. Want to see what I could do.
Absolutely.
You
And it
know?
is difficult. I can tell you, I agree with you that it's very difficult to get spots on lily whites. And so it's that much more personally satisfying that I've personally with my own pairings been able to achieve what I can now what I know is difficult. So I'm with you. Like, and I actually, I'm biased, but I think super dowel fraps would look really good personally.
I do. I think they'd be cool. I think they'd be cool. Because I think orange and black. Like that frappuccino orange with some. I'm just curious. I'm curious to see. I'm curious if the combination of genes would interfere with the color or saturation of the spots. Will I get oil spots? Will I get dark spots? Well, I mean, how will they look? I've seen not that I know for sure that certain genes or genetics affect the color of spots, but maybe I've seen so many different colors of spots that maybe this unexplored territory will unveil something. I mean, maybe I don't know. Like I said, I've seen red spots and yellow spots and green spots and all types of spots. What will frappuccino spots look like, or will the two genes not affect the color at all? Will they just be regular old black spots?
Yeah,
It's
and we won't
it's
know if we don't try, and
exactly.
so
It's the
I'm all
unknown that's
for it.
got me doing it.
And we got to stay excited for these
Sure,
things, especially
sure.
if you've been working with them for years. You don't. I don't think anybody's aiming to be one of those people who's out of a hobby after like 4 years or whatever, right? We want to keep it fresh, keep it exciting, and feed our curiosity. That's kind of the whole point of this hobby. You're not going to make a ton of money for most of us. It's
That's very,
it's a
very,
hobby.
very easy to. I mean, at least for me, I'm going on over 8 years. I was looking at some of my Facebook posts, and I was showing off one of my old geckos, and that was 7 years, and she was growing in that picture. Facebook memory. So I'm saying I've been breeding them for about 8 years now.
That's awesome.
I can't tell you what season I've been the most excited for because every one tops the past one, and we're going on 9 seasons, and I'm just as excited every year. Like, hell yeah, I've never done this. I want to do this. And
That's the
it's,
running joke in my house. Every year I say to my family, and they're like, I say, this is the year. This is the year. Every year. I'm like, this is the year, guys. I'm telling you. And that's the joke.
but how cool is that, though? I mean, that's real love, man. That's real passion. It's
Absolutely. As I do this longer, like I bred weird dragons and all that sort of stuff, and a few other species, and I was excited to check the lay boxes. But with the crested geckos, I've been very satisfied. The more I breed, the more excited I am to check my lay boxes. The more I'm like hovering over like certain pairings and all that sort of stuff. Like I try not to be, overly annoying to them, but I'm just even that much more excited as time goes on. So that's a good sign.
sure, sure.
Pattern Dows. Let's talk about that for a little bit because it's surprisingly I hear it more and more and more. It's not
So, I think it's going
something
to be
that
big.
is really frowned upon as much as I think people think. Um and surprisingly on Palm Street, I've sold a few pattern Dows that probably sold higher price. People bidding more against each other for certain ones versus a regular super Dalmatian. You know,
Yeah,
so,
if you're a pattern doll enjoyer, like it's kind of harder to find them, nice ones. So,
mm,
rarity, scarcity. Yeah.
so what are you trying to do? Like Harlequin ink spot Dalmatian type, or what is it that you're working with?
So mostly I'm doing either extreme harlequins or just high white coverage animals with the spotting.
Oof.
I'm also working soft scale into it, so that's one of those situations where I kind of had to take a few steps back to take hopefully more steps forward, and I'm pretty pleased with the results, right? Because I feel like um, putting dowel spots against that really matte coloration that you can achieve with soft scale is just a little extra piece de resistance, stuff like that. I also have a few pattern dowels that have like a midnight black base as well, which I think it looks really cool with the dowel spots. So there's a million directions you could take pattern dowels, as many directions as there are non-patterned sort of looks. Any look out there, dark phantom, you could put Dow spots on that, right? And some people are working on that. And those full coverage lilies, in theory, you could put Dow spots on that, right? And that's kind of where my lily side of things is trying to go with a lot of snowflaking, a lot of high coverage lily whites, and then just like a shit ton of spots on top of it. And one thing I struggle with in my own personal calculus is like, how many of these pairings should I do? Um, because I don't know if people like them. And like Anthony mentions not wanting to sell the animals, but me, I have a limited space. So eventually I do move them, and I do actually get what I ask for them quite frequently because again, there's a bit of scarcity with pattern dowels. But yeah, I'm always on the fence about what to do with them, and I waffle back and forth. But I've been having a lot of fun, and I think I ran 2 or 3 pattern dowel pairings last season, and I did I think 15 total pairings. So it's whatever percentage that is of my overall sort of sets of pairings.
How big is your collection altogether? How many animals do you have altogether? I
I
mean,
try
minus
not to count.
hatchlings, like adults.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't even know for adults. I would say I have maybe like 100 adults
Oh, that's
or
not bad.
50 adults. So nothing like, we're not a huge operation over here, just me. And I before my work slowed down a lot, I was working like 60 hours a week. So, and it was like construction. So, I didn't have a lot of time or space to have too large of a collection, but I think I do all right.
Awesome. That's manageable. It's nice. So how just out of curiosity, 'cause I'm always curious to talk to people with different backgrounds and see how and if it affects how they keep their animals. But what do your setups look like for hatchlings, grow outs, adults, breeding pairs? Do you keep your pairs together year round? Do you separate them? Explain to us how you do what you do with these animals housing wise.
Housing wise, my approach to any animal I've raised is to give a variety of microclimates if possible. Um, Herps especially are very good at selecting the set of conditions that best work for them, right? So whenever possible, well, I started off my collection with paper towels, like a lot of people recommended, and I found that it was just like it was nasty for my sort of animals and sets up, and like they got nasty really quick. I was spending a lot of time cleaning. They weren't really um like I had furniture in there, but they seemed to to be missing a little something for my personal way that I like to keep my animals. Um, and also, I come from a background where I have I've built my own and maintained a lot of vivariums and paludariums and all that sort of stuff. The planted terrariums, whatever. So pretty quickly, I switched over to bioactive or semi-bioactive, and not only did that allow them to kind of have access to more microclimates and enrich themselves with burying themselves or whatever they do, hiding amongst the bark. It also allowed me to add springtails and detrivores like that and kind of take the edge off things like mold or doo-doo and things like that. Add a little bit more of a nutrient cycle to those bins as well. And I still clean up the poop probably like every like week or two, depending on the size of the animal and how much, like, for lack of better term, square footage they have. But it kind of makes me feel a little more at ease about the nastiness in the cages. Um, I also, especially if an animal is not um if there's something a little up with an animal, they're not really acting as vigorous as I'd like them to, I'll usually give them a humid hide as well, just in case they're looking for a little more humidity or something along those lines. I try to give them access to a lot of different types of cover, and this goes back to the value of those New Caledonian expeditions and all that sort of stuff that people are taking with an emphasis on crested gecko habitat, because you can look at their natural range and the contexts at the end, the height in the understory versus overstory that they use, and you can use their natural habitats and behaviors they've been observed doing in the refugia, we call it, the areas they hide in, to kind of inspire what you're offering them in
That's
captivity.
huge. I
So I
think
try to give
that's
them,
huge. Putting over
yeah,
to
there's
an
a lot
animal's
of things.
overall well-being. You know, I not to interrupt, but
Yeah.
I always
No, go
tell
ahead.
people that an animal's environment is who it is, right? Animals evolve to ecosystems. Ecosystems don't evolve to animals, right? So these animals' natural environments is everything that they are. Like we need, in my opinion, we need to give them as close to an environment as their natural environment that we can, in order for them to be what they truly are. If that tongue twister makes any sense, you know, it's
Yeah.
we. And I'm not knocking paper towels, but a crested gecko cannot be a crested gecko in a plastic bin with a paper towel. Like it's just, to me, it's not fair. It's not fair, and that's not what that animal. And whether, I don't care how many generations they've been in captivity, just like you can't take a tiger and put it in a cement box and say I got a tiger. You know, it's just, yeah. I
Yeah.
like
And
how you do it though, and I just wish that more people had that approach. You know, I wish more people were on iNaturalist. I wish more people were studying, you know, their natural range. And I get we can't take New Caledonia and put it in a box, but you can, like you're saying, you can, you know, take some of these observations and translate them the best way you can into the area that you have for your animal, right? Like an animal needs to express certain behaviors, you know, to, it's just, it's mental stimulation. I mean, it's I'm sure you know, there's lots of studies that will show what happens when animals don't have their natural environments. You know, I mean, you take horses away from a herd and put them in a stall, they'll kill themselves ultimately. You know, they certain animals need their environment to live, not just thrive. You know, they need certain things. It's
yeah, they have these urges to perform certain behaviors because those behaviors are very beneficial to them in the wild. Like one thing that I try to offer my crested geckos, no matter what age they are or style setup, I'm always experimenting with setups, right? Whether it be tubs or whether it be exoterras or PVCs or this or that, I'm always like trying different setup and different types of refugia and all that sort of stuff. And one thing that I was inspired by with these expeditions to New Caledonia is the bird's nest ferns and the way that leaf litter and the forest floor kind of interact with these bird nest ferns, or the buttressing roots of the various
you know, they
trees that
found eggs in them,
they'll.
right? They were
Yeah, I
Thomas,
believe
one of the guys.
so.
Yeah, they were finding eggs. They, a lot of proof
And
shows that these things aren't just coming down to the ground and laying eggs. They're laying eggs in the canopy.
yeah, and I've had um I've had crested geckos in my care while making eye contact with me lay eggs on the walls of their glass enclosure. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. You're
Interesting.
not a day gecko, but um and now that doesn't happen often, but that's another thing. It's a kind of a side note, is all of these geckos are individuals and have individual proclivities and quirks and weird things they'll never do or always do. But back to the bird nest fern, like I'm also a proponent of giving these animals what they're looking for at whatever way you can, right? Now I can't put a bird's nest fern in every single enclosure I have, but I was kind of perusing content and all that sort of stuff, and I noticed a friend of mine, she was keeping her crested geckos in these tubs, and a lot of people were dumping on her for it, but I thought it was kind of brilliant. She had taken craft paper, like that cardboardy craft paper, and crumpled it up And the geckos were, I was looking at her stuff, they were lodged in it the way one would lodge themselves, the way I'd seen plenty of animals in my own field work lodge themselves at the base of trees or in leaf litter or in the base of ferns to kind of sleep for the day. And I was like, that's brilliant. So I started offering, still in my bioactive tubs, um, offering a lot of my animals this craft paper that had been crumpled up to kind of approximate the base of a fern, and they love it. They love it. They spend all this time in it. They crawl through it and they interact with it a lot. And for me, like, I know it's kind of not the prettiest thing to look at. I would prefer to give them a bird's nest fern for a lot of reasons on top of it just being pretty. But for a large collection of animals, we have to balance like effort and cleanliness and all that sort of stuff, right?
Function.
So
You know,
yes,
serves a
function
purpose, for sure.
and
I've
uh,
seen even
um,
David from Tiki's Geckos with his gargoyles have a bunch of that cardboardy craft paper crumbled up and stuffed into some of his bins, and they cram themselves right in the
yeah,
cracks, and I mean it works.
and they enjoy it. And again, would I prefer to give them bird's nest ferns? Of course I would, right? I would prefer to give them the world. I would prefer to give
This
them each a room, right? But
this is
it's not
different. This is
easy.
this is different. David has a bunch of egg carton. What
In
what
some,
she's what she's
in
talking
some
about is, I know exactly what she's
crumbled up
talking about,
paper, crumbled up craft paper.
and that was a shame that that person went through what they went through because of that, but it worked, right?
Just stop.
It
That
worked,
that
and I contacted her and was like, "Hey, man, like I understand that, like, we all know this as reptile keepers, as gecko keepers, we all know that you can't please every single person, right? But I think you gave me a really good idea, and me and my geckos thank you, like, honestly."
yeah, yeah.
So
It's
it's
just
hard
the way it
because
looks, and to the naked eye, if you don't have that train of thought of seeing what it does and how it works, you right away judging, but it is a
yeah.
kind of a good idea, right?
Yeah, it
um
looks like literal garbage, like, it looks like crumpled up garbage. I totally understand the knee-jerk reaction that people have, but that's another thing, a way I use my background to inform my reptile keeping. It when I did both my undergrad and my master's, a portion of it was observing animals interact with each other in their habitat and assessing stress or body condition and all that sort of stuff. And so I will try different setups and watch the animals in them, watch their body condition or their behaviors change over time. And um, the internet can cancel me all they want, but I'm listening to my animals, right? My animals' health and their behavior is going to tell me what works best for them, right? If some of my animals, I give them a nice, lovely, fully planted, live plants, UVB sort of tank, and they hated it. They hated it so much. Their neighbor loved it. They hated it. So, I have to put the animals first. Instagram would love me to have them in this big, Exoterra with pothos and Zamioculcas and all that kind of stuff. But this particular animal just wasn't into it, right? And I have to put the animal first. So I put the animal back in their previous enclosure and they were happy as a clam again, right? And so the animals themselves will give us a lot of information, and it's good to listen to experts, it's good to listen to experienced people and different breeders, but the geckos are who you should be listening to first, in my opinion. And if you pay close attention, they'll tell you a lot. They'll tell you a lot.
yeah, that's why everybody
Cool.
should be doing their own tests with their own collections at home and not just listening to what everybody tells them to do. I
Yeah,
I'm Anthony, you've done extensive tests with your own collection where you're questioning like the norm of what people say. I've done quite a few different tests, and it's like not everything that people say is the truth, you know?
absolutely. That's been my experience as well. I've run my own, even in my short time in the hobby, I've run my own experiments with the common wisdom sort of things and go, the geckos are telling me something a little different.
I actually find them to be bogus more than I find them to be valid. A lot of these common ideas. I test everything. I'm just I'm not a scientist by any means. That'd be dangerous if I had a degree, but I'm a scientist at heart. As a kid, everything I did was an experiment. And I'm the same way today. Nothing changes. Everything I do is a test, if you will, to see the outcome. If I don't have an answer, I do my style of research, mini tests to find the truth or a common answer. And I have debunked a lot of these gecko facts.
Totally. And like even everybody's house and conditions are going to be different as well. Like somebody who might
Absolutely.
who might have to mist every day goes onto the internet because they have such a low relative humidity and they have a lot of ventilation. They go on the internet and they say, if you're not misting your gecko every day, you're abusing them. And then somebody who lives in Florida tries misting their geckos every day and they're having all these fungal infections and skin issues. And they go, oh my God. So you have to
Let's
keep
always
in
tell
mind that
people nature is our proxy. Nature is our proxy.
Mhm.
However you get there, I don't care, but that is our goal. New Caledonia is our proxy. That's everything we should be gauged off of. So how you do it in Arizona, I don't care. How you do it in Florida, I don't care. But this is what we need to do. So many other people are out there like, I'm telling you this, and this is what you have to do. If you're not doing this, and they just don't take everything you said into consideration. There's so many other little factors that they fail to realize that what you're doing in Arizona isn't what this girl in Canada is going to do. She's not going to get the same results.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
and that's, again, I don't want to start harping on people or things, and I'm not sure that bitching about it, to be quite frank, is going to ever change anything. I think that people are always going to do that. Someone's always going to be a leading authority on something to their audience. And
Totally.
It's also, you have to understand though, bro. Like it's also the fact of, you look at what you just said, right? That's what you believe in.
well, New Caledonia is where they come from. I think that's
I
the
mean,
proxy.
no.
That
What
is
what I'm
the
saying is,
proxy.
look at what you just said. That's what you believe in. So you're gonna stand on what you believe in. Somebody else that's done their research and done what they've done is gonna stand on what they believe in. What's most important is being willing to hear the next person out and understand what they're talking about and what they're saying without
Yeah,
knocking it down.
you
You get
hear
what I'm saying?
everybody,
So
sure, but you can't do what everybody tells you to do. You could certainly listen to what everybody does. I mean, you could, again, like we're saying, you could tell me how you do everything you do down in Florida. I have no problem sitting here and listening to you, Mark. It works. It's obviously it's doing great for what you do in Florida. I cannot do what you do in Florida up here. My animals would be dead. I cannot do what you do. You get what I'm saying? But what we can all do is copy New Caledonia, right? No matter how we get to those parameters, right? If we follow New Caledonia's parameters, you could do it how you do it, I do it how I do it, Heather does it how she does it. Everybody does it across the country how they do it, as long as they meet those natural parameters. So what someone in Canada is saying, yeah, I'll hear them out, but it can't be law for everybody. What you're doing in Canada to meet those natural parameters in New Caledonia is not going to work for someone in Arizona trying to meet those parameters.
Totally.
It's law in their world, but it's just not logical for someone in Alaska to do what someone in South Florida does.
Yeah, there's more than one way to skin a cat, but we're all trying to get that
Absolutely.
cat skinned.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly. Yeah,
Absolutely.
so I'll
so
hear people out on however they want to do it, but like you said, animals and achieving that goal is
That's what makes it different, because they do have a natural set of guidelines. That's the controlling topic, if you will, right? Is the animal's natural environment. Though that temperature, that humidity, those food requirements, those are facts. Those are scientific facts. How we
It's tough though. Like one thing that we have to consider, and this is something that was brought to me in my degree, is that the current conditions of New Caledonia might not be the animal's ideal conditions, because across the world we're dealing with increased drought or variable like weather events and all that sort of stuff. You could be checking the New Caledonia weather and all that sort of stuff and not actually be providing the ideal that these animals, like you said, that they evolve to. So that's another facet. But it, yeah, to match their conditions that they're best suited to is our goal, right? And again, in my experience, normally the animals will tell you, hey, are you, like, you're not really meeting my needs. I'm having problems shedding. I'm not super into the eating part of life. I don't reproduce very well. So yeah, just we're all doing
Like
our
the
best.
temperature thing is the one that always gets me, right? Like
Mm.
people say you have to keep them at like this certain temperature, and a certain temperature will kill them. I'm not suggesting anybody does anything that I do. And I'm going to say that again. Do not do anything I do. I have had all of my geckos well over 100 degrees and didn't lose a single animal. Like multiple times. Multiple times my room has spiked 100 and something degrees and I have not lost an animal. Do I have fans on everything? Am I a huge advocate of circulating air? Absolutely. Did I want that to happen? Absolutely not. But it happened and I didn't lose anything. So I guess my point is saying that when people are out there like, oh my God, if the animals get up to 80 over 83 degrees, you're gonna lose them all. I mean, that's clearly not true. Like that's there's a lot of other factors. Again, air circulation, microclimates. A lot of animals were buried in the substrate those couple days. Like it was a hard one running through a blackout. A heat wave, no power. It was a rough one. But and again, like I said, it wasn't my choice. There was nothing I could do about it. But I didn't lose anything.
Yeah, you provided them ample microclimates to manage what they could themselves until you
Well, I
could
had a
get them
choice.
back
I
as
had a
ideal.
generator. It was
Yeah.
either plug in an air conditioner or plug in fans. I opted for the fans, believe it or not. I didn't plug the AC and I went with the fans. And it, hey, I wouldn't wish anyone to have to deal with that. But again, my point is that they like you said, they're bomb proof. These animals are their natural environments are always changing. I guess it's
Yeah, and you'd be surprised. Like I do think ventilation is probably like the secret sauce, honestly. And
is
I find in the best ventilated enclosures I have, I'll have geckos like basking under their lights. Like I'll give them plant grow lights or UVB lights, and they'll be out just in the middle of the day, just like, yeah, whatever. And the basking spot is almost 90 degrees, and they just like it. So,
I got
and
dozens
they're
of
all
videos
individuals still, but yeah.
on my Instagram page of crested geckos chilling right out in the UV basking in the middle of the day. I mean, I again, not all of them, like you said, they all have little, individual personalities, but it's a very, very, very common thing. People say they don't bask, they'll cryptic bask, they don't need UVB, they're not out during the day. I mean, a lot of mine, I have geckos that hide. They'll sleep. They fire down, if you will, and they drop their eyes, if you will, and curl up a certain way, but they're right out in the open. They think they're camouflaged, but they're in the light. They
Yeah, and more power to them. And a lot of gravid animals really benefit from an increase in heat as well.
sure.
I used to work on a this is a desert adapted species of lizard, but I used to work on blunt-nosed leopard lizards, and we'd have gravid females out in the height of the summer in the Central Valley of California, where it gets very hot, and we'd have their tags on them clocking in at like 120 degrees Fahrenheit, and they're out there basking because they're full of eggs, and so
What's the science
maybe.
behind that? Because it's a known thing with chihuahuas too. Chihuahuas, when my chihuahuas, and not just mine, but many people's, when chihuahuas, you can always tell when they're gravid and close to laying, is that chihuahuas will always be hunkered down, near some heat source. Why do reptiles seek out heat when they're gravid? Does it have anything to is there any science behind it? What is the science behind it? Do you know?
I guarantee there's science behind it, and have I read any of those papers recently? No. But I can give you the old college try. Reptiles are they don't generate their own heat. They're ectothermic, right? And a lot of their metabolic functions are reliant on external heat sources. And we all know that maybe not personally, but we all know that being pregnant or gravid is a high amount of metabolic strain. You got to do a lot of things, whether it be sequestering nutrients or calcium into your eggs if you're going to lay your eggs. But even my viviparous rattlesnakes would have their baby bellies out there in the sun too, not only to aid those metabolic functions, but probably also to get those babies themselves warm, or those embryos themselves warm, and allow their
Something
functions.
a logical explanation. Just just
Yeah, I'm sure.
metabolically, it's helping them work faster,
And I
boosting their
guarantee
immune.
that research is out there, and that if more community members could help each other find the answers to these questions, like
Remind
I
me, I'm just gonna look real quick. I'm gonna Google
yeah,
it.
no, you absolutely could. You could go on Google Scholar and search things like embryonic development at different temperatures, like, this, that, and the other thing. And I guarantee you'll find at least a few papers. There's some very understudied um, topics in reptiles and beyond, but I used to help my cohort do reptile thermal ecology work as well, and it's a pretty well studied area. It's not my specialty, but thermal ecology is super interesting. We used to cook lizards and this, that, and the other things. I guarantee it's out there
Gravid reptiles
for
seek
sure.
higher, more stable temperatures to accelerate embryo development, reducing gestation time and increasing offspring survival rates. As ectotherms, they use basking to increase their body temperatures, which directly benefits the embryos, particularly in cooler climates where behavior is essential for successful reproduction. Keys for increased heat seeking during gestation: accelerated development. Higher maternal body temperatures significantly decreases the gestation period, allowing for earlier birth or egg laying. Optimal embryo growth: gravid females maintain higher, more stable body temperatures to ensure optimal development, often matching the specific thermal needs of the developing embryos. Survival strategy. All right, well, there's a lot known about it. Okay.
Yeah, totally. And it kind of boils down to what we were just talking about
Yeah,
is
basically like
reptiles
everything
are
you said, yeah.
yeah.
National Institute of Reptile something, Basking. Oh, I'm gonna look at this later. That's cool. I never actually looked into it, and I just always took it as yeah, that's what they do. Never really read into why. Interesting.
Yeah, and we're only like we can usually only guess as to why unless we perform these experiments
Yeah,
where we
right.
like manipulate these things and all that sort of stuff, and that's where the sterility comes into play. But I love to think about how to investigate things like that or why it might happen. So, um, and I don't think it has to be only herpetologists or scientists investigating these questions. A lot of times, as a herpetologist, when I worked in academia, a lot of us were very closely coordinating with and getting a lot of information from herpetoculturists, right? Like you can study an animal all you want in the wild and all that sort of stuff. That's great. But you have a completely different perspective and set of experiences and completely different insights when you've been working with these animals in a captive environment too. So, like, I really think science has a lot to offer the captive herp husbandry side of things, and the herp husbandry and herp breeders have a lot to offer the scientific sides of things. I really think that they complement each other very
Agree.
well.
I absolutely agree. You all right over there, Mark?
Huh?
You all right
Yeah,
over there?
yeah. I'm thinking. I'm thinking. I find it interesting. I find it interesting.
So, are
He's
you
ready to open
offering
his own lab.
what's your lighting look like? Do you offer lighting to your hatchlings, grow outs, adults, only breeding pairs? Do you use lighting? Do you believe that there's benefits to using particular lighting other than grow lights for plants and whatnot? Talk to us about your theory on lights and your collection.
Yeah, I don't have a very strong theory on lights. I'll say that. I'm always experimenting, right? My first crested gecko, I offered, UVB and plant grow lights and all that sort of stuff. And a portion of my adult breeders, I offer UVB and grow lights. Now, do I see a difference between those breeders and the rest of my breeders? No. I've not observed any difference, but it's a
Yeah.
small sample size and it's not systematic, right? So that doesn't mean anything conclusive as far as I'm concerned. I just do it because I can. Why not, right? You never know when something might crop up, and I go, wait a darn minute, all these females under UVB have had perfect calcification of their eggs versus the animals not under UVB. I do it because I can and because I find it's interesting. I would not say I keep the majority of my collection under any sort of specific lighting um, for any particular reason other than curiosity or convenience. But the majority of my collection does not receive any sort of supplemental lighting. Um, I have grown animals up on UVB, and I've also not noticed a big difference at all. Um, so I don't have any strong opinions about UVB. When I worked in animal labs for my undergrad, we were very conscientious about flickering from CFL bulbs. A lot of lighting depending on the actual like incandescence or this or that, right? LED versus CFL versus like incandescent bulbs. They might not be detectable with human vision, even screens, right? They may not be detectable with human vision because they flicker.
Flash.
Um, and you can sometimes detect that flicker when you film a bulb or this or that. But um, fish, reptiles, insects, they all have a different sort of visual processing system than we do. They live life in different FPS than human vision does. So I'm cognizant of the fact that if we provide certain types of lighting to animals, we could be just like strobing them all day, and that could stress them out, right? And as somebody who used to research stress, that's not very good for them in a lot of ways. It reduces their immune capacity, it reduces their reproductive output, it reduces, their growth and other sorts of positive metabolic functions. So um, that is a possible downside of certain types of lighting that we have to consider, along with raising the temperatures or affecting other sorts of environmental issues. So I wouldn't say it's like all benefits to provide animals types of lighting, but I do try to give them either LED or like non-flickering types of lighting when
Any
I
chance
can,
you've
because when
have you ever seen that documentary, the David Attenborough documentary called A Life in Color?
yes, yeah,
Crazy, right? That always
yeah,
gets
it's
me
amazing.
thinking, about animals and UV rays that most of these reptiles see in UV wavelengths, I guess, and without them, their worlds are a lot different.
Or dull,
So
yeah,
basically, that's why I use them. And with my bearded dragons, ironically, as crazy as it is, I know for a fact that they can see better when there's UV present versus when it's not. If I try to feed them without a UV light on, they'll chase shadows. Like they'll literally chase the
mm,
shadow. Second I turn a UV on, they're like a freaking heat-seeking missile. As soon as the UV, and I don't know how to explain it, but it made the documentary make sense. I completed their spectrum by introducing UV rays into their area. I put glasses on them, if you will, and it always makes me think with the geckos and the reptiles in general. Like, am I like dulling their world, or like, am I killing their world by not having UV rays in this room? So I even have overhanging ultraviolet lights in my room just for my animals. Well, my intention is to help them see better, if I had actual sun in the room, incorporate UV rays. I use giant reef tank bulbs, fish tank bulbs for like a reef tank.
yeah, and that's
Yeah.
something we actually have to consider a lot in animal research is what spectrum the animals see in. And there's this kind of fallacy that a lot of researchers fall into is we willingly or not, like we anthropomorphize our animals and we say, well, what if I was in a little box or this or that, or how would I feel if I didn't have live plants or so on and so forth. But these animals experience and perceive the world in ways that are completely alien to somebody like you or I, and we do the best we can. I'm sure we maybe like over anthropomorphize a little bit, but we do the best that we can to provide them with what we picture to be the most beneficial to them, right? And I think that light thing makes a lot of sense, that you're doing for them. But I guarantee you, there's senses they have or ways they perceive the world or experience the world that we could never ever figure out and never
Sure.
meet their needs on. So we're always going to be striving, and we will never perfectly create their habitat, but we have to accept that and just do the best we can, and I think that's a
It'd
really
be
cool way of
nice
trying to
to,
do that.
you know, just like again
Yeah.
back to that documentary, watching with them filming I think it was frogs or maybe it was even day geckos. They were showing them like courting in the woods and showing, you know, from like their point of view, you know, like through eyes being able to see in UV wavelengths, and it was just crazy how they filmed with the camera, you know, with a UV filter on the camera and literally showed what I guess they think they see, or I don't know if they know for a fact that's how they see, but it just made so much make more sense, you know? Every spot on a butterfly's wing, every dot on an animal, the contrast in colors on certain things, it all had a purpose, you know? Like you saw the purpose. It's like, or
Yeah,
Dalmatian
absolutely.
spots on a crested gecko? Are they really like a breeding thing? Like, you know, it's just like so many
Yeah,
weird
maybe
things. And
they
I'm always
glow under
thinking,
UVB or under their UV vision or whatever. And like, yeah, things like bees, they have these
mm-hmm.
little targets on
Of
the
course,
flowers that we can't even see, and they also can tell which flowers have nectar in them still by an electrical charge that runs on like down the flower. And so maybe geckos have some sort of sense like that too. I don't know why they would, but again, I'm just a stupid human. I don't know what it's like to be a gecko. Maybe they find food using electrical charges or something like that. How could we possibly figure that out, honestly, as keepers? So
sure.
we're always doing our best, but who
I
who
mean, they
knows,
don't they
honestly.
they what is it called? Vanderwall's force,
Yes,
Vanderwall's force.
Vanderwaals forces,
So I mean,
yes,
that's like part of their daily lives, right? Like I mean
exactly.
that and their feet. I mean, it's just so much that is the norm to them that's mind blowing to us. That's like, hey, who the hell am
Yeah,
I
we
to?
can't even imagine moving through the world like that. Yeah. So anybody who tells you they know exactly what's going on with geckos or exactly what they need is
They
grifting,
have
in my
no
opinion.
idea. The smartest people I've ever met always, they're very humble, I'll say that. They claim to know the least. The smartest people I've ever met will always say they either know for a fact or they will be the first to tell you I don't know. I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
know.
and that was always my philosophy for teaching is like, hey man, I'm giving you my best guess, but we can research this together, or we can do whatever we got to do to figure this out, because like that's what achieving higher education and higher
Sure.
levels in the field you're in is about. It's not about like knowing the most and being satisfied where you're sitting. It's actually to learn what you don't know, if that makes any sense, and learn
Absolutely.
to identify the massive gaps in our knowledge, and understand that we have those gaps and try to fill them as best we can and realize we'll never fill them anyway. So yeah, I
I'm
think
always
crested,
cautious of
maybe I'm
people that
getting
got
a
all
little,
the answers.
yeah, and maybe I'm getting a little highfalutin, but I feel like crested geckos is a good like case study in that, because anybody who points at you and says, I know how this gene works exactly, and this and that, or I know exactly how to keep geckos, and it has to be like in this, 75 to 77, and you spray them twice a day. You're kind of telling on yourself. That's good for beginners, but like if you really think you have all the answers for the genetics, for the husbandry,
Red
all
flag.
that sort of stuff,
Mhm.
yikes, man. Yikes.
Sure. For sure.
Hmm.
So so you have done some tests in the past with certain things. If I recall, I know I've seen some tests that you've done, or I've heard you talk about it on Palm Street. a couple of times. You want to give us an example of a test that you've done and the outcome?
Yes, with an asterisk. I haven't run the numbers yet. But one experiment that I did in my own collection for my own benefit, not to rag on anybody or anything like that, was I was trying different food types, right? So this was at the time where vital meal was becoming a lot more like prevalent, and I wanted to start feeding vital
Yes.
meal.
Yes.
After I had been raising my collection on Pangea. I love Pangea. I love Pangea growth and breeder. I love Pangea fig and insects. And I had been hearing a lot of anecdotes about vital meal. Oh, they clean their bowls, they this, they that. I said, okay, cool. Cleaning your bowls is all good, but what I care about is the body condition and healthy growth on an animal, right? We don't necessarily need to grow the fastest, but I want to see good body condition. I want to see good muscle formation. I want to see a good feeding response because I like my animals to get to the food before the fruit flies do, so on and so forth, right? So what I did in this experiment is to try to minimize the amount that genetics plays into this. I took um, clutches with 2 eggs, and when they both hatched at a similar time and at a similar weight, I randomly assigned one of the siblings to a Pangea treatment and one of the siblings to a vital meal treatment. And for their whole life, essentially, they received, for their crested gecko diet, they received this exact ratio of growth and breeder, fig and insects, and water, versus their sibling who was receiving this exact same ratio of vital meal insect and vital meal fruit to water. And I fed them at the same time, the same amounts. This was a pain in the ass, but I also fed them size matched crickets, the same number. I don't know why I did this to myself, but it was a lot of work. And I raised them like that for a certain amount of time, and I had anecdotal observations, and then at the end of the experiment, I weighed them all in. Was this a perfect experiment? No. Would this be the end all be all to vital meal versus Pangea? Absolutely not, right? This only applies to the way that I raised my babies. There's a million other things that could affect the outcome. And when I weighed them in at the end, overall, I haven't crunched the numbers in like the exact correct way yet. I just did a rough stuff because I don't have access to my statistical software anymore, so I'm gonna have to do it all in Excel. But the rough preliminary results was that they gained more mass faster with the vital treatment, but it wasn't terribly significant. Like, it wasn't like, oh, they're double the size of their siblings. It wasn't that way in most situations. Sometimes it was, but who knows, right? There's a million reasons why those outliers or whatever happened could have led to those results. And that's why sample size is necessary, because if one pair of siblings, if one of them I accidentally scared really badly one day by dropping them or something, and they were really scared for like a month and they didn't want to eat a lot for a month, right? That would make it look like whatever they were eating wasn't giving them a lot of nutrition when it was really just, human error. I dropped them or whatever, or they just happened to be scared, or, whatever, right? So I had a lot of different animals I did this with to try to minimize those effects. And again, I did it in siblings to try to minimize the effects of genetics, because we've all had some pairings where their babies are just beefy baby things and they always grow fast. So um, the I just wanted to see, for my own satisfaction and for my own ability to feel good about switching diet, that there was a comparable growth rate and body condition. And so I've fully switched over to majority vital meal now, because I do, especially with young geckos, I get a really good feeding response from vital meal. And then I also achieve the body condition, the muscularity, and all that sort of stuff that I'm looking for on vital meal, which is very achievable with Pangea, by the way, based off of my experiences. But it's just a little more what I like with my collection with vital meal.
Because of a better feeding response. Have you tried Blue River Diet, Lugardi, Repashy, BPZ?
I would love to recreate this experiment with a bunch of different types of diets, but that would probably take another master's because that was a lot of work. It was so annoying. I was texting my friends. I was like, I'm so glad this is done when it was done because feeding is already a huge chore. But then, like, if you can imagine picking out crickets and like matching, food amounts and this, that, and the other thing, it was a lot of work and for no reason because
No,
I'm no
I
longer
can't
a
imagine it.
publishing
So hats
scientist.
off to you.
Yeah, I'm no longer a publishing scientist anymore. Everybody always has complaints in the hobby whenever anybody tries to show what they've been doing. So it's not for praise either. Um, but it's just, I enjoy investigating questions like that, and I can, sleep a little better knowing that I have some data to back up my own personal choice of food.
So you choose you say Vitamil is good. Vitamil is a good one.
Vital meal is good for my animals in my this is the scientist. There's always asterisks. And vital meal is good in my conditions with my water and my, this and that and blah 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 and the housing that I keep them in and blah 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 blah. And I I
Just
always tell
because you do
people,
what you do, it may not work for the next person.
yeah, and people come to me a lot because I do these educational lives on Palm Street, and they come to me a lot and they want a prescription for how to keep an animal, and I will give them what I would tell any beginner keeper and stuff like that. But then my next breath is to say, hey, I recommend talking to different people, especially experienced breeders in your area, because my conditions are probably going to be very different from somebody who lives in Florida, from somebody who lives in Canada, from somebody who lives in Arizona. And I bet you a breeder who's a little closer to you can probably give you some closer insight into what might work best for you. And then also, why would I say that my version of care is the best version of care out there? No way, right? You should talk to multiple people. You should get multiple perspectives. I like my perspective, but obviously I'm biased, right? So I think you should talk to as many people as you can manage and find out what works best for you or what advice makes the most sense to you and hear everybody out. Like even if they're kind of a weirdo, maybe they'll teach you something you don't know.
Have you ever messed up? Is there anything we could
Yeah.
learn? Is there anything you want to share that we could learn from? I've messed up many times. Nobody's
Oh, I've
perfect,
messed up
but
a ton, dude. I've messed
I
up so often. I couldn't even pick one particular thing to tell you about, man. When you're experimenting or when you're a human or when you live
I
in an old
ask
house.
I
Yeah.
ask because I feel like that's very important because everybody always comes up on the stage like if they're perfect and never talks about their failures. And I feel like talking about our failures more often can help combat that cancel culture because, you know, people make mistakes. People learn from mistakes.
For me,
You
you get to
can't
make
be
mistakes every
perfect.
day.
Yeah, you
Well, I
can
make I
never
make a mistake every.
you can never be perfect without making mistakes. Like you can never win without
Absolutely.
losing, you know. So I try to ask everybody that if there's a failure that you want to share that could enlighten somebody, maybe to not make that mistake and learn from your mistake, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give an example of where I was too scared of like the internet, right? So I had this phase early when I was keeping where I was just a little too scared of what people were like saying on the internet, and I should have known better. This is completely my fault. I've been keeping reptiles my whole life. I, I'm a herpetologist. I should know that the Facebook brigades and people giving you prescriptions on how to care for animals, that's ridiculous. Like when people say spray, if you don't spray your animals at least once every other day, that you're a piece of shit, right? Like I should know that there should be a million asterisks on that. But I was new to crested geckos. I was kind of I don't know why I was nervous. Again, they're bomb proof, but I was just feeling some type of way. Feeling a little too uncertain of myself for whatever reason at that time of my life. And for my conditions, in a very humid time of year, I was spraying too often based off of the advice that I consistently saw as I researched. And my animals, I saw them. This goes back to listening to your animals. I saw them declining. I saw them. Like they weren't out as much. Their skin didn't look as good. Like basically they weren't allowing, like they didn't have the dry out period that they needed. But I was like, man, but the internet says, man, some people spray them twice a day and all that sort of stuff. And I had an animal get very sick with like a skin condition because of that. And I said, at that point, I was like, okay, fuck it. Like, I'm just doing my own thing, back to the way I've cared for animals in the past. Like, I'm gonna do what my animals want. And in the conditions that I have in this house with like trees over it and the ambient humidity and the way that this house, behaves and all that sort of stuff, I cannot spray my collection very frequently. I have fans going in there, like all that sort of stuff. But I maintain an ambient humidity of at the lowest 60, so I can't be spraying all the time. And like I rarely spray unless they're in a super highly ventilated or heated enclosure, and my animals are a million times better for it. And I lost that animal. He died to a skin infection because the vet couldn't do anything about it and all that sort of stuff, because I was too scared of the kind of culture that was on the internet around reptile care. So like I went back to my old ways of letting the animal tell me what works best for them in my conditions, and I'll never go back. I still make mistakes every day. It's not that mistake. I don't try not to make the same mistake
Yeah.
twice, and I'll continue to make mistakes until the end of time because like I'm not a perfect person and I never will be. But that's an example of a mistake I made, and I regret it, but I won't do it again.
So to kind of piggyback off of that, we're coming up on 2 hours now. So I to piggyback off of that, I would like to know if being in the hobby as long as you have, and taking into consideration everything you've learned, all the advice you've gotten from people that you've applied, if you could give, I don't want to say one piece of advice because that's not necessarily fair, but if you could give some advice, your best advice to a new keeper, someone coming into the hobby who may want to follow in your footsteps and kind of do the same type of, style of keeping slash breeding that you're doing, what advice would you give that new keeper who knows nothing about the hobby?
I would probably say, like the chain of advice I would give people is start small and conscientious, right? It's easy to get overexcited and to dive in head first, and then to have things get out of
Get
hand.
that gecko ADD.
And yeah, absolutely. And we all have some sort of weird mental illness to be into this. Like, why is our hobby chores? But remember, like we're if you're learning a new species, it's going to take a second, right? And it'd go back to what I keep saying, which is let the animal tell you how it's doing. If you need help learning how to read your animal's body language or what to look for a sick or lethargic animal, reach out to breeders. It doesn't have to be me. It doesn't have to be Mark. It doesn't have to be Anthony. It could be whoever you like, and hopefully that moral and ethical breeder will direct you towards resources or coach you themselves. There's plenty of amazing people in the hobby who will hold your hand through this and help you assess your own care and animals, right? You need to become educated and empowered to assess your own animals, your own collection, and on the genetic side of things, do the same thing, right? Educate yourself, learn about super cappuccinos, learn about why lilies don't, aren't paired to one another, um, all that sort of stuff. As we start uh, working with more and more morphs, things like incompatibilities between genes and all that sort of stuff are going to become more and more relevant. And if you want to work with these sorts of morphs, you have to understand the morals and ethics around it and make those decisions yourself. So education and empowering yourself to not just rely on other people, but also assess your own collection and care yourself.
Nice.
Was nice.
So are you
Thanks.
Like,
you are selling, right? What would you suggest someone does for moving animals, right? We talked about breeding them. We've given some advice for keeping them and things to do as a keeper. Now, what advice would you give someone that has successfully bred for a season and has, say, 50 babies? How do they get rid of them? How do they market them? Where do they look? How do
Yeah.
they brand themselves? What do they do now?
I'm not a social media fiend, and I still manage to make sales. Palm Street has been good for me for that reason because I sure can yap. But a piece of advice that I give people is learn how to take like a half decent and accurate photo. I've seen a lot of people trying to sell their animals, and it's like a grungy, like over the toilet shot of like a gecko who's jumping out of frame, and it's like dark, and you're like, I can't tell how nice this gecko is or whether it would be good in my program because I can't really see what's going on. So learn how to take photos and learn how to give information and describe your animal. I'm a terrible salesperson. I really am. But people still buy my stuff because I have decent stock. I'm biased, but I have decent stock and I can show my animals in good lighting, and they can see the detail. And I take nice photos and I give information, nice enough photos, and give information about them and support the customers. So be accessible, take nice representative photos, and hopefully the breeding stock you chose is good. That's my advice.
Well, now that you mentioned that, now I have to ask a question that I don't know why I didn't ask earlier. How do you feel and how important do you feel lineage is when it comes to buying, pairing, breeding, starting a program with animals? What's your stance on lineage?
I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, I value lineage at about a 5 in my own breeding programs. It's very helpful to know things like whether an animal is het for phantom or is there a lot of highlighter in this lineage or something like that, to achieve a look that I'm going for. But I never hesitate to pull the trigger on a no lineage animal because
Love it.
um, I think what you see right there, if you've developed your eye, you can tell a lot about a gecko by what you just see right in front of you. And I've never regretted a no lineage purchase myself. Sometimes things surprise you out of no lineage stuff, but that's why you have to experiment with them, and things will surprise you out of animals with lineage as well. So lineage can provide really important and valuable insight, but it's not an end all be all for me at all.
Sure, I agree 100%. I think that's what it's for. And when you said and you started with the scale thing, I instantly said 5 in my head too, because it either is or it is not, right? It's one of those things where it's going to help you. All it is helping you. It's reducing your odds, right? It's helping. It's giving.
Yeah.
It's just a predictor, right? Like it's giving you a better chance of knowing what the outcome is going to be, as opposed to an animal you know nothing about other than what you see. I mean, I can have an animal that's het for phantom, right? And I don't know that, and I pair it to something. Now, boom, I'm popping out all these phantoms over here when I had a harlequin right here. Like, why are these things coming out solid? Like, what's going on here? You know, knowing the lineage would help you avoid that or increase that, But as far as buying animals, like people, I feel a lot of people get it twisted. Like buying an animal that comes from this animal came from Chunky Monkey. All of my babies are going to be $3,000 super Dows. Then you pop out like two super Dows that ain't worth nothing but $60 a piece out of a $4,000 animal. Like, good. So what your lineage? Yeah, rub it on your chest. Like, lineage has a value for certain things, but unfortunately not for what a lot of people think it means. Lineage doesn't mean you get to put it's I don't want to say it's not like dogs, but it's not. It's not like you could say my dog's a two times his parents are both purple ribbon winning champions over here. Like he's a $7,000 dog. Like all of his pups are going to be $7,000 pups. It's really not like that. Well, you can't just say that this is a $5,000 gecko because it's from this animal. Like in a lot of
Yeah,
they use it as a
exactly.
marketing thing, and it means nothing when it comes to breeding. I don't care who the parents are. It doesn't mean anything when it comes to producing animals.
Yeah, I treat it like maybe a hint of what might happen with this baby, but it's just a slight possibility. And I suppose I also do use lineage too. I'm not huge into like inbreeding or line breeding without a purpose, so that's another
Good
utility of having
strategy.
it. But I try not to breed like no lineage to no lineage animals or ACR to ACR or this to that, just to avoid like inbreeding depression or all
Good
that sort of stuff. But
practice. I will admit
yes,
that. That's why I put it at a 5 myself. I don't want to say that
yes,
it's irrelevant because it's not. I think, and I dream, one day that the future in the future of the hobby that we do all start keeping some sort of lineage for everything. With the
totally,
small
yeah.
gene pool we have, it'd be nice to know that these animals come from these lines, but to sell and market and brand an animal as something special because it's from something special, that's not valuable to me. It
Yeah.
doesn't increase the value of an animal unless that said lineage is going to put me closer to something I want. Like I think a known het exanthic, 100% het exanthic is more valuable than an animal that's from this animal, from this said animal. Like that means
Yeah,
nothing. I mean, at
it'll
least I
if
know what I'm going to get at, the chances and what I'm going to get out of 100% het exantic over, an animal that just has just a good looking animal. It's, again, like I said, I do believe that lineage is valuable when interpreted the right way.
yeah, I would say our personal eye as a breeder is more important than lineage by my maybe that's controversial, but I would say that. And it is just
Uh,
lineage is just one tool in your toolkit.
Lineage didn't, the term lineage and everything being just, it didn't pop up in the hobby until 3 years ago. And everybody made everything they made up until this point, without tracking and selling lineage. It's a market. I genuinely believe a lot of people are using it as a marketing tool.
No, no, no. Yeah, I agree. I'm gonna put my, my unbiased 2 cents into this real quick, just so it's stated. Our eyes as breeders, lineage is part of the toolbox. I agree with all of that. There are some people that keep very good lineage, and it does help and mean something and raise the price of their animals because with the years of them breeding, their lines have proven to produce and show certain things that they've worked towards. So that's where pay attention to the lineage
In those
there
instances, yes.
and pay attention to how long those lines have been worked on. There are people that started yesterday and have a line all of a sudden named, the gecko room line, and has only been two seasons breeding, telling you that this is the best super Dalmatian in the world. If you see something that you like, buy it, but don't really go by the line. And then there's people that, like you saying, market the hell out of their shit. You buy into the line and it doesn't produce shit what they're marketing, and they just got you. Also, lineage for me is not Heather and Anthony. Where did Heather come from? Who's her parents? who's her parents' parents, where did Anthony come from, who's his parents, who's his parents' parents. That to me is lineage, but it's turned into
A
I don't know
blanket
how to
term. It's a blanket
yeah,
term that
yeah,
people.
a
Yeah.
blanket term. That's the perfect because it's like, oh, I just hatched a baby and his name is Goggles, and Goggles comes from Mark, and then that's the lineage.
Yeah, read people's posts. It's like this baby is out of this pair and this pair, who's out of this pair and this pair, and out of this pair and this pair, and it's I've been breeding for 3 years, but I got 4 generations of like you do now. I've been breeding for 2 years, but yet you've produced 4 generations. Okay, all right, okay, I hear you. Good.
Hmm.
Mark that up,
Hmm.
buddy. Let me know when it
Yeah.
sells. But there's always
Yeah.
someone new that's coming in the door that's gullible and gets got. So
Yeah, that's another. I think it's a mistake we all made, right? Maybe there's some of us who haven't, but I was just talking about people with the rite of passage of getting duped by certain like serial photo editors or this or that or certain marketing terms. We've all, or not, maybe not all of us, a lot of us, myself included, have fallen prey to certain famous lines combined with photo editing or this or that, and I get the animal and go, okay, and we all, it's nothing to be ashamed of,
photo editing
but
too,
it's,
man. Oh God,
yeah,
that's a whole podcast,
that's a
right?
whole,
Like I find it
yeah,
ironic too that it's usually the people that'll tell you not to edit or oversaturate or whitewash your pictures are the ones that are doing it. Like, how are you telling people not to do it while you're doing it? Like, it drives me up a
yeah,
freaking wall. It's like, dude, I'm not even a photographer. I'm so, and I can clearly see that that's not real. Like
yeah, that
tone,
paper towel
shadows,
sure is
shades. Like,
blue.
come
That's
on.
where do you get these blue paper towels from? That almost
Oh
looks like a
my
shop towel.
God.
Hmm.
Just not realistic.
These are the 5%.
I didn't
You
edit it. I
know,
just did
the,
this, and I
the,
might have did this. But it's not edit it. What do you mean?
there
Like,
are
oh,
there are a lot of people that don't edit. They give some good photos. You know, they give some good
lots
lineage.
of people do, sure.
You know, like I'm with you guys both. Also, if I see something I like, bro, I barely ask. Like, if you give me all that information, I even respect it more. But I don't even talk to you, and I'm like, I just want that because I see something that I want.
Of course.
Buy now. I talk to you later. Thank you very much.
Of
We don't
course.
even have
Yep.
nothing to waste our time talking about because I want it. You know.
Of course.
Thank you. You sent me the pictures. I appreciate it. But I was good without them. I'm even better with them. We're but you just gotta be careful out there.
I got
But
a
I think that's
$2,000
also
camera that I don't use because it automatically just makes the animals look better than they are almost.
I
Like
give you a
I
hundred
don't know how to
dollars for it.
explain it, but my camera just I mean I could shoot in JPEG, I guess, and it gives a little better look, but it still doesn't look like the ant. I don't know how to explain it. Like they're nice pictures, but I have yet to be able to master it. I don't want to say I like a dirty looking picture or a grungy looking picture, but I want it to look real. I prefer my pictures to look unprofessional, if you will. If my animal looks really, really good in an unprofessional picture, and that's not to say that I don't admire the shit out of good pictures because I do. It's just in my world, I don't. I'm so nervous about people thinking I edited it, and I'm so against editing that I don't use my camera.
Yeah, for my undergraduate research,
So now what?
I did analysis, like statistical analysis on colors of fish using like
Really?
photography and all that sort of stuff, and that process taught me that photography and like accurately representing color in photography is insanely difficult. Um, Even an unedited photo is not necessarily like a good representation because of the auto white balance or like for me, my phone, I just end up taking mostly phone photos, and my phone, because of the tone of my skin, because of my lineage, will make my photos look a little like some type of way in certain lighting, and it's, I try to mitigate that in certain ways, but it's always going to be a struggle for all of us. And I like Anthony, I have a nice camera down there. It takes really nice photos, but I still end up taking phone photos because like
I
they're
mean, not
kind of
that
not
the
as nice.
cameras, these phones take good pictures. I mean, for what they are, I guess. I don't know. There's people out there that have, I guess, mastered the art of photography. I see some amazing photographs, like I
Yes,
guess I don't know what
absolutely.
the real animal looks like, so I just assume that's what it looks like. I don't know. It could all just be a figment of my imagination too. It's hard to say that an animal doesn't look a certain type of way when all you have to see is the picture and not the animal. So it's I don't even know how to say
Yeah,
what I'm
and we
trying to
all
say.
love a good glamour shot too.
Uh,
It's we all love these animals, so we all love to take these looks at them
it's
all up
upsetting when you
close and all that
get
sort
an
of stuff.
animal that you liked a picture of and it's not.
Yeah.
It's a picture in your
Yeah.
hand. you know?
Yeah, I'm not doing those glamour shots for my selling photos because, like, like you said, they're larger than life on this, like,
Mm,
macro shot of them and all this sort of
yeah.
stuff. And you get the animal and you're like, oh, well, sorry, my dog wants attention. Go on.
We're dog friendly, trust me.
Yeah, he can tell he's trying to get attention because of it.
Mine's been in the room
This
whining
is
to go
a
to the bathroom for the last
dog-friendly
40 minutes.
podcast. No worries.
Yeah, he's like, you know what? These guys seem like they like dogs. I'm gonna get in the way.
So speaking of, for someone that is good at taking pictures, obviously, what are some tips you would give people to take good pictures that properly represent their animals? What are some quick tips that you would give someone new to the hobby that's looking to market their animals professionally, but yet authentically?
Yeah, I wouldn't claim I'm good at taking photos, so
You
I'll
take
put
good
that out
pictures.
there.
Your Instagram has some
But
nice pictures.
oh, thank you. I would say if you're taking it on your phone, remember that everybody's screen has different settings and all that kind of stuff. Make sure like um iPhone settings like blue light filters or night shift or something is off when you're dealing with your photos, right? Because if you have a blue light filter on and you're trying to like look at your photos and pick which one is the most representative of your animal, well, you filtered all the blue light out of your screen, so like it's gonna look more orange. Um, when I take certain photos, I have things. Sometimes I have things in the photo that I know the real color of. Like whether it be paper towels or whether it be a skull or the palm of my hand or something like that, where if I take a photo of a gecko and I go, oh shit, my palm is like red. It's not really like super red. It's a little red, but it's not super red in person. So I can look at my palm in front of me and look at this photo and say, there's probably something a little off about this photo, right? Same thing with paper towels, and that goes for purchasing animals as well. Where are they getting these paper towels that are brighter white than the sun or like blue like shop towels? Like, So if you take a look at your photos and you're like, shit, my phone really blued out this photo because these paper towels aren't really blue. So get you some reference stuff. You can do things with cameras like calibrating using gray cards and this and that. I think most of us are going to be taking phone photos for the sake of things like Instagram or whatever. But if you're working with a DSLR, there's a lot of things you have to take in consideration, least of which is white balance. So that's where I'd start. And also get features of the animals in the photos that you might be interested in as a buyer yourself, right? For me, I like to see the laterals and the dorsal of an animal. So maybe take it at a 3/4 view and get these things in there, maybe both sides. I see people take a lot of photos strictly from the laterals, and that's great. But if I'm thinking about putting this into an empty back project or whatever, I want to see the dorsals too, or like this, or the
It's an
dorsal
awesome
too,
point.
or maybe I want to see their head structure, right? Don't like we want to make our geckos look great, but don't obfuscate, right? Don't only do their good side, right? Let's see their bad side too. This is my bad side. Anyway, like show their actual head structure if you can, because I've had a lot of friends who get animals and they're like, wow, this animal's structure is shit, because they took these photos that kind of made their head structure look bad. You don't want, first and foremost, you don't want a customer to be surprised or disappointed when you get the animals. You might not have like the it doesn't look the most white or whatever in this photo, but if it's the most accurate, that's the one you should list it with, in my opinion. But,
Awesome.
morals and ethics are also a personal thing, and not everybody makes the same decision about that. So
Unfortunately.
that's, yeah, unfortunately.
Awesome. It's a great point. I never even thought about that. I also never really taken pictures to sell animals, but that's a valid point. You should incorporate the things that people would want to incorporate into their projects. Dorsals, laterals, head structure. Get an angle that shows all of the above in one or two shots. That's
Yeah, I try to keep
awesome.
it to max 3 photos because they don't need to see like every angle of the animal, or sometimes a video can help, right, in certain platforms. But just to get most of the features of the animals out there for people to see. If they want to ask for more photos, by all means, I'll take more photos.
Sure.
But yeah.
All right. Well, we're at about 2 hours, guys. So we are going to wrap this one up. Is there any announcements that you want to make? Anything you want our listeners to know, where they can find you, where it's easiest to find your animals for sale, where it's easiest to reach you, best way to get a hold of you? Anything that you want our viewers to know about you? This is your time right
The best place to get a hold of me and actually communicate with me is on my Instagram at Leyline Exotics. I don't have a Facebook page or anything like that. The majority of the sales or animals listed for sale you'll find on my Palm Street, but you can always just message me on Instagram for availability or to inquire about certain animals you may see on Palm Street. Palm Street is the main platform I sell on for a variety of reasons, but I just really like to talk to audiences and fellow breeders and all that sort of stuff, just kind of shoot the shit. And a lot of that shit shooting is on my mostly weekly educational lives I do on Palm Street, where we'll talk genetics, we'll talk care. It'll be from the most basic intro questions to advanced like discussions that multiple breeders will have. So if you ever want to just see what I'm like to talk to, or if you have any questions for me or questions for the community, then you can catch me on those. They're usually Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Pacific, but that's kind of subject to change because of my consulting biology work. So that's another place to find me. But Palm Street is a horrible thing to message on. So if you want
now. It is
a
terrible.
fast or efficient response, it's for whatever I like about the platform, there's a lot of criticisms I could make, but they don't sponsor me or anything. So but the best place to reach me is Instagram, and I don't really have a website or any other socials because I am a very busy person, but I'd appreciate it if you could
Awesome.
reach out on Instagram.
Yeah, go follow her, guys. Everybody follow her. I just followed her myself on Palm Street. I'm not big on Palm Street, so don't take it personally. I just
No
followed you
worries.
now. You have a show starting in 4 days, 20 hours, 49 minutes, and 54 seconds. Is this still going to stand? You still having
At
the
the
show?
time of recording.
Okay, at the time
I
of
think
recording.
so. Yeah, it's always subject, it's always TBD sometimes because my job will be like, "Hey, can you be out, across the state in 2 hours?" Sure. So
All right, and Mark, you have any announcements you want to make? Anything you want to say? Anything going down at the Gecko Room? Any famous jewels you want to drop?
No, man. I want to say make sure I tune in every now and then for sure from work and things like that on Heather's Palm Street. It's how I never got to meet you in person, but I actually stumbled upon your Palm Street one time. I believe that's how I got to meet you, and I found it very interesting. I would suggest everybody go to your Palm Street. A lot of knowledge, a lot of good times. Um, Great animals. I actually got an animal from Heather also, which
thank
I
you.
love, and I'm like that. I saw it. I'm like, what the hell? Bye now. Thank you.
No, that was one of those moments.
Yeah, that was one of those moments. And yeah, the work that you're doing with Kristen, love it. Love both you guys, what you're doing. So follow Heather on Palm Street, Instagram.
And
And
please go
then
look at Kristen's Pixel article on her website,
Yeah, guys, for sure. I'm
crustyworks.com.
excited about that myself.
yeah.
Support Kristen any way you can, man. Cresty Works, dude. I promise you, and I've said this in other podcasts, she would support you, man. If you were doing something cool in this hobby, that woman would be the first in line, man, letting you know how good you were doing, guys. Go show Kristen some love.
Yeah, and that's basically it, bro. What's the next one dropping on Sunday, right? The next one's dropping on Sunday.
What's that, podcast?
Yeah.
Yes. This Sunday, it's at Andrew's, right? Yeah, Andrew from White Tank Exotics.
Yeah, but by time this comes
I
out, that
can
would
make
have
reels.
already dropped.
Yeah, this full episode. Who says I can't make a reel?
That's true. That's true. That's
Hey.
true. So
You
yeah,
guys, content brain is.
stay tuned for Sunday. White Tanks.
Yeah, awesome
and
episode, guys. Awesome episode.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it. It's always fun.
yeah,
Sure.
and stay tuned for the next Thursday.
And if you're in the market looking for PVC, acrylic, or our latest rack system, head over to monsterbox.us. Got you, guys. Don't worry. All right, guys. That's it for this episode of New Cow Corner. We appreciate you, love you, and above all, stay weird, man. Peace.